All right, peace. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste, Hotep. Shalom, shalom. Ashe. All the greetings of love and light to the darkest minds of light, to the HOK Coliseum, to the HOK family. We did not do a smoke session today. We were supposed to do humble. I don't know if Sonetter reached out to him because Sonetter had a pretty intense show with Tazariak today, Captain Tazariak. So shalom to Captain Tazariak. He was there and he was on a type kind of like a hot seat. So that was very interesting. That went for a while. Our brother Humble did actually hit that panel with the rest of the bomb squad. And some other people were on there from the bomb squad. Shout out to the bomb squad. Shay was there, God Energy. I don't know if Pitbull is bomb squad, but nonetheless, they were on there and they were pressing Captain with questions. I also, later on, I saw that our brother Yara, Black Sage, hit the panel. And then the discussion went to the subject of first century texts regarding the New Testament. Now, as you see the title, I said on the title and what I'm saying now, this isn't going to be long at all. Peace to you, Meter and Lonel. So I'm not looking at the text so much. I mean, at the chat, but I look down and I see you guys. Okay, so peace to you. So I just want to get this out here. So Yara, who actually did a debate as one of my teammates, we went against Jabari along with our brother Gorilla Hebrew, and we were arguing, debating the authenticity of Christ, of Jesus, of the Bible. And I mean, I'm not sure, I think Yara brought up some information that corroborated what I brought up and what Gorilla Hebrew brought up, which was that there is, in fact, first century writing, and there are creeds. There's what we say like creedal not text, but creeds that were written into the first century text that is available from Paul. What I'm trying to say, I'm really flabbergasted because I'm confused how Yara is saying there's no first century text. Paul is first century text. There's no, not even Bart Ehrman is disputing Habermas, Gary Habermas, about the first century text with the creeds, which are speaking about it was oral tradition before it was written down. That's what I'm trying to say. It's still first century. Paul is still first century. You know, Habermas says it's mid 30s AD, but the consensus amongst all scholars is that Paul is in the 50s AD. So I don't get it. Like how it was just, to me, Yara, and I told him I'm going live, how you're sitting there just like glazing, saying, yeah, so of course, with the brother who's saying there's no first century writing regarding the New Testament. So what I was saying is, before it was even written down in the first century, we're talking about like year one after the crucifixion of Christ, year 1 or 2, there was Christology that was amongst all the people during that time who were in that region where the writings originate. What I'm saying is, people knew about what happened. And when I talked to you today, Yara, I told you to tune in. You said, you as you always do, you went to you moved the goalpost and went to something that had nothing to do with what I asked you when I called you. I said, are you saying there's no first century writing? And you're like, I said, what about Paul? And I think I said, what about what Gary Habermas is presenting? And it's not just Gary Habermas, but he's one of the main proponents of this information. And you said, well, we don't have any writing from Paul about the virgin birth. And we need, without the virgin birth, this is what you said, brother, without the virgin birth, we can't, the gospels are useless. Basically, I use the useless part in there, but you're like, the gospels we don't have the gospels. They don't, basically, they're nothing. I mean, that's not exactly what you said, but that's what you were alluding to. And then I had to remind you, going back to the creeds, okay, and I believe it's 1 Corinthians is one particular one of the texts that's in the first century, talking about, I had to remind you that it's about the death and resurrection of Christ. That's the crux of the gospel. That's the crux of the life and the so-called visitation of God in the flesh, Most High God incarnate, which is Jesus. It's the death and the resurrection. Of course, the miracles of the birth and the miracles that he works, you can argue that they are not authentic and that they're not original, I should say, not authentic, that they're not original. But the creeds are what stand strong. So I will say this to you and also to our brother God Energy. I am more than happy to debate that those creeds even predate the text, the first century, what was written. Here's some summary of this information that I know off top of my head, but here are some things that you can go research, Yara and God Energy and everybody else who's so eager to try to discount the validity of an actual living of the proof that we have that there was an actual living Jesus. Ehrman doesn't even dispute that. Those writings, Paul's writings, which are first century, they hold strong. And again, within the writings, what I'm trying to impart, I got to get my emotions dialed them down. Within the writings of the New Testament text, there are creeds that predate the actual writings. You understand? Okay. So Habermas famously mentioned the potential existence of a Gospel of Mark fragment. I'm not even going to get into that, but I can. I won't even talk about Mark, okay? Because that'll take us off of the hard evidence that there are first century writings, and within those first century writings themselves, there is what we would say there was an oral tradition or oral Christology of the existence, the life, the resurrection of the life, the death, and the resurrection of Christ, of Jesus. Okay, so all right, let's see here. Let's do this. The creeds are very important. All right, so now the physical manuscripts, which we already I said, those are much later than the life and the death and resurrection of Jesus, around from the 30s, between the 30s and 50s. Okay, Habermas says mid 30s. Other scholars, even very critical scholars, say 50s, but that's first century. All right, but the creeds before those writings that came from 30 AD to 50 AD, the creeds were like a year, if not between 0 to 2 years after the actual death of Christ. Okay, so in 1 Corinthians 15, 3-7, Gary Habermas emphasizes that passage is a formalized creed that Paul received and passed on, meaning that he received it. It was a known creed, like he died, was resurrected, descended into hell 3 days. On the third day he arose. Then he was ascended. So all of that, like the breakdown of Pontius, he was crucified, tried by Pontius, all of that is in the creed. And that predates the actual text, which is still first century text. Okay. Critical scholars, as I mentioned before, generally date the origins of this specific material to within months to 5 years of the crucifixion. Critical scholars, not even just Gary Habermas. Critical scholars put their stamp on it. They don't dispute that there is first century writing, God energy. Don't follow Yara down into a pit. All right, so whether you believe in Jesus or not, the writings are there, and the critical scholars admit that there are writings from months to 5 years. Oh, I should say, I take that back, not writings, scratch that. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. That there are creeds, that there is Christology, people saying, this is who he was, this is what he did, this is how it went. And it became it's a very popular creed. And then Paul wrote it down in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. So, excuse me, it was not a writing that we have available to us today. It was not a writing, but it was in fact a known oral type of tradition that was repeated about Jesus. And no, Yara, the virgin birth is not crucial in that, even though the virgin birth is in the creed. Well, for the most part, his whole life is in the creed, but the crux of it, the mainstay, the foundation of it is the death and resurrection, and then the ascension to be in heaven with the Father. So this isn't going to be long. This is just because Sonnetter, for some reason, he doesn't like, for me, he only likes it to be a boys club when he does his House of Consciousness. So when I wanted to hit the panel, if you see the end where you see me go on and it kicks me off, no worries. I can just come over here. He likes it to be like a boys rub-a-dub-dub over there when he's going live about stuff. Because I was going to come in and actually just present this information. It wasn't going to be long. But yeah. So months to 5 years following the crucifixion, the significance, Habermas uses these early oral traditions to demonstrate that the central claim of Christianity, ready, Yara? This I'm helping you. You know how you always say, oh, Napa, you don't read? Yara, you know I read because I'm reading this right now. And, it's all, no, I'm not doing any pop shots or anything, but I need you to understand that the central claims of Christianity are the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. That's even, who doesn't know that? But then you must think I'm dumb. You must think I'm dumb, or maybe you're just flying by the seat of your pants, because the virgin birth isn't central to Christianity. Anyway, Habermas often cites the wealth of manuscripts. Now he's talking about the actual manuscripts, right? Okay, the wealth of manuscripts and the narrow interval between original first century writing and the earliest extant copies to support New Testament reliability. Again, I'm just dumbfounded because you did a whole debate with, you partnered with Guerrilla Hebrew and myself against Jabari to argue this actual information, and now you're saying it's not authentic and that it's not real and that it didn't exist. You're saying the church fathers created the New Testament. That's just crazy. So when you got up on the panel and Sonnetter actually was telling the truth, because you were faced with a formidable Israelite in to Captain Tazariak, you said no, I didn't say that. But then once he left the panel, you were like, yes, that's absolutely correct. At least God Energy was like, I faced Tazariak head on, and I disputed what he said, and I refuted it, and I offered this information. And then you're like, yes, I agree. But Yara, I use Gary Habermas as a source, a primary source, as far as his information with Paul. That was the primary, and his research on it. And then you were like, oh yeah, that's great, I was going to use that too, but I used something else. And I got to go back and look at that debate, my friend, because you are singing in completely different tune now. You went from baritone to soprano, and I'm just wondering what in the world is going on here. Habermas often cites the wealth of manuscripts. I'm almost done. Habermas also often cites the wealth of manuscripts and the narrow interval between original first century writing and the earliest extant copies to support New Testament reliability. Ryland's fragment. So then he goes into like just the actual information, like Ryland's fragment P52. He notes that the oldest confirmed fragment, Papyrus 52, dates to approximately 125. Yes, I know. We know that's not first century. So I'm just, there's some extra stuff in here. But I just wanted to show that part about the creeds predating anything that was actually written down, still first century, between 30 AD and 50 AD. So there is writing. And then I heard God Energy, because people want to cover all their bases, because I heard God Energy say, oh, they're saying that's Polycarp that wrote that. Oh, now Polycarp wrote all of Paul's epistles. Now some of Paul's epistles, I understand, yes, we know that all of the epistles are not Paul's, are not considered what we'd say actual Pauline, or actual Paul's writings, I should say. But for sure, several of them are in Galatians. Again, I just spoke about Corinthians. So anyway, I think you said Polycarp. I don't know what you said, but you said that somebody else wrote it, not Paul. But I'd like to listen. I mean, I'm not really even combative when it comes to God Energy. I don't think I'm combative when it comes to Yara, but like with Yara, God Energy, he's saying what he knows, and this is where he comes from. But Yara, you stood strong side by side with us, using this particular information in debate with Jabari, my friend. What happened? I mean, everybody can, we're all on our journey spiritually, but you could explain to us how you went from quoting. Now, don't quote me, but I think you were saying that's Gary Habermas is great. And now you're like, no, church fathers wrote all of the whole New Testament. It isn't worth anything really when it comes to if it's authentic. When I say authentic, I mean written by who it says and is about Jesus Christ, who died through crucifixion, was crucified, died, and then was resurrected. I'm almost done here. Habermas maintains the scholarly consensus that the New Testament books were originally composed in the first century, roughly 50 to 100 AD. Now, Habermas says, I think he also says, like I said, Paul is 30, mid-30s. But anyway, that's about it. That's all I had to say. There's another one too, another scholar. Now, Richard Bauchman and Gary Habermas argue that while the physical manuscripts, this is what I mentioned earlier before I start reading this, the physical manuscripts indeed do date 1st century. The physical manuscripts of the New Testament, they do date 1st century, but much later date after the crucifixion, like from 30 to 50 AD. Okay. They say that the primary text contain embedded creeds. See? And these creeds and hymns were composed within months to a few years of Jesus's death. So we have when they were recorded and written with, according to Gary Habermas, would be between 30 and 35 AD. But again, who knows what somebody's going to come out and say in this community. People are so upset that they had to go to church on the weekends and miss, fun stuff that they want to say. I don't know. Let me stop I don't make this personal. I just want to get the information out. Okay, the resurrection creeds. The resurrection creed, I should say, which I mentioned. I mean, it doesn't hurt that I actually grew up in the Catholic Church, and the Apostle Creed is what we had to, every Mass, we had to learn it. Every Mass, we had to recite it. So, and that's just the speaking of, I'm quoting off of here right now what I'm reading. It says it's the quote gold standard for the 1st century creed. It's the gold standard, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 3-7. The text is, part of the text is, for I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins, was buried, was raised on the 3rd day, and that he appeared to Cephas, that's Peter, then to the 12. Datings. Most scholars, including atheists like Gerd Ludemann, date this creed to AD 30-35. Paul uses technical rabbinic terms for, quote, received, which is paralambano, and delivered, which is paradio domi. Okay, indicating he is quoting a pre-existing tradition. What does that mean? I'm going to drive that home even more than going back and forth about the facts that there are 1st century writings. There is, in fact, 1st century, but the mainstay of that holds it together is that even before the writings that came much later in the from 30 AD to 50 AD, or 30 AD to, I'll say, to 100 AD, even more important is that there was an oral tradition. There was what we say speakings of Christ, like Christology, the teachings of who he is, what he did. And that was, as they say, months to a few years after his crucifixion and resurrection. But we'll just say crucifixion because nobody's going to say that. We're talking extra biblical. So, and then we also have here, it says the Christ hymn. This is Philippians chapter 2. This is Paul. These are the epistles. Chapter 2, verse 6-11. This passage is widely recognized as pre-Pauline hymn that Paul inserted into his letters. You see? Do you understand? So when you sit there and say, though, there's no 1st century, that is not true. That is egregiously wrong. That's like a insult to all that not just we talk about amongst so-called believers and people who study and research about the life of and the authenticity of Christ. Yara, I'm speaking to you. It's not just disconcerting about that, but that you stood alongside us and fought in a debate using this actual information for the most part. What went wrong? You need to stay out of those chats with those. Stay off of Discord, Yara. Please. They're breaking your whole faith down. You need to get out of Discord, Yara. You need to sit with people who are intelligent and who know the information. That would be me and other people. Get some Christians around you who actually, like you were trying to say to me, saying I don't read, who actually read and aren't afraid to examine the Bible like you do. I suppose, like I've talked to you, I think you examine it, try to be diplomatic, not diplomatic. You try to be unbiased. That's what I'm trying to say. My head, I can't think straight right now, but let me finish reading this. So I haven't even looked in the chat because I wanted to stay on track here. Okay, Christology. It describes Jesus as being, we're talking about Philippians chapter 2, verse 6 through 11. It describes Jesus, Yeshua, as being the, quote, very nature God, choosing to, quote, make himself nothing, and being exalted so that, quote, every knee should bow. The primary evidence is the rhythmic, poetic structure and unique vocabulary, words not found elsewhere in Paul's writings. God energy. This is proof. There are first century writings that are available, but they prove within that text, it is showing that there were hymns and creeds that predate by decades, that predate those writings of Paul, and they also prove that there was in fact a living man who was known as Jesus, the man who's spoken about in the New Testament. The rhythmic poetic structure and unique vocabulary, words not found elsewhere in Paul's writing, suggest it was an established liturgical piece used in the earliest first century churches. Okay. Finally, Romans 1, 3 through 4. This identifies first century, it is a first century primary source because it has a formulaic nature, which I will read this part right here. It says Romans 1, 3 through 4 is a primitive creed describing Jesus as the Son of David, according to the flesh, but the Son of God by the resurrection. Okay? Romans 10, verse 9, the simple confession, Jesus is Lord, which scholars like Rudolf Bultmann identify as the, quote, crystallized creedal statement. There it is, creed. It predates Paul's writing, but Paul's writings are first century. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, often called, quote, the hymn to Christ, it outlines his manifestation in the flesh, vindication in the spirit, and ascension in glory. All right. So for now, I'm going to leave you with that. And I'm putting it out there. This is the Colosseum. Of course, there are first century writings when it comes to the New Testament. And within those writings, there are creeds and hymns that are proof not only of the existence of Christ, but those creeds and hymns came directly after the crucifixion of Christ, within months to around 3 to 5 years. All right, AD. Okay, so that's it. You can have this now. And now I'm gonna look in the chat and see what y'all are talking about, and then I'm gonna close this out. Okay, let's see here. Ebony Knowledge said, she said, but he also uses levels of truth in his argument the best lies contain levels of truth. Oh wow, let me see. Let me go to the top. Peace, Ebony. Let's see. Let's go to the very top up here and start reading. Okay. Hotep. Silent K says there's of course Silent K. You're one of the reasons I think you're one of the people that messed Yara up. I think he's been in Discord listening to you. They are absolutely no. Oh, there are absolutely no first century texts. No, actually, I just read. So those are big zeros, big wrong. But thank you for being here. I just gave you the information. I don't know who belly danced around and hypnotized you with their navel ring to make you think that that information is not authentic. But you need to get out of this spell and just face it. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, the facts are there. And even critical scholars agree that there are first century texts. And within those texts, there are creeds and hymns that are very close to months after the crucifixion of Christ. Rebuke and Reprove said, let's see, they deny history because they are brainwashed by the white liberals. Y'all giving the white liberal, the white liberals are over there wrestling with ice, okay, getting unalived. But I appreciate your comment. And I'm not laughing at that, but I'm just saying, dang, that's okay. Thank you for your comment. Israel Unite says, not believing in the Bible, logos alchemy. Okay. Israel Unite also says oral traditions, facts. Exactly. Oral traditions. Metatron 9 Thoth says, peace, queen. Peace to you. I'm glad you're listening. All right. Ebony Knowledge said, it's nuanced. They're playing in pockets. They say they compiled and other. Oh, they say they compiled and altered the text basically. Yes, that was what was said. I think from if you're talking about Yara, there are elements of truth in that assessment. Okay. The book itself still states the text shouldn't be added to or taken away. You just have to keep that in mind reading it, in my opinion. Yes. Thank you, Ebony Knowledge. Alpha Royalty says Black Sage tucked his tail. Ebony, okay, thank you, Alpha Royalty. Ebony Knowledge says Yara just picks a position and will say anything to be right, laugh out loud, or seem right. Yeah, that is well, Yara, you know I have a lot of compassion for you and your family. Sonetter does too. When I say compassion, you know you're our brother, but she's not wrong. You be lying up there sometimes, my friend. And tonight I don't want to get personal. So when I say lying, I'll take that word back. You just kind of, I don't know. Anyway, I just put the information out there. We can always have a decent conversation. I really don't want to go back and forth with like any insults. I really want to know what happened. Like, are you in Discord with the Bible haters and the Jesus haters? Because I think our brother Silent K is telling on you. Stay away from those forums if they're going to lead you astray, because that's what's happening. Ebony says, but he always uses levels of truth in his arguments. The best lies contain levels of truth. Yes. Okay. Peace, Ebony. All right. Let's see what this person says. Dwayne Franklin, Napa. When we doing my presentation? It's Humble. Oh, Humble. Damn, Humble, you need to get, okay, Humble. You know what happened tonight? I asked Sonetter when he was live, I said, are we going to do Humble's thing? And he said, I'm just going to have the bomb squad come in here. So yeah, Humble, I even mentioned it at the beginning of my stream that I'm doing. So we can definitely do it. Let's do it tomorrow, okay? You were up there doing, giving the smoke in a giving the smoke to Zariak on the House of Consciousness. You guys can tell I'm tired, huh? Because I'm like blah, 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 blah. Like a first time with my new words. Silent K says, where's the text at? The text I just read. Silent K, you too. You need to stay off Discord. I just told you First Corinthians, and there was a couple others. Here's some text I'll read to you. I'll just off rip. Romans. There you go. Romans and First Timothy, Philippians. Those are authentic first century. I'm a slavery hater. Well, brother, I am too. Okay. I can't say anything. Okay, great, Humble. So I will tell Sonetta, because I don't have your Humble. This is my email. I want you to email me your contact information, all your email, of course, I'll get it, and your phone number, and I will contact you, and your Facebook as well. And I'll contact you tomorrow, and we'll make sure that we get you in here. Sonetta, that was an important smoke session with the captain. Captain agreed to do it. Sonetta didn't want to miss that opportunity. And think about it, Humble. I don't want to do that. Like, I asked Sonetta, he's right. We don't want to have your show going on the HOK Coliseum, and wouldn't have had an opportunity to get in there and challenge the captain, and you did great. So, all right. So send me your information to that email, and we will do your show tomorrow. All right, everyone. So there it is. And Humble, let our brother, your bomb squad brother, our friend God Energy, know that I'm more than happy and interested to discuss this information with him, because I heard he was the first to bring it out. But really, I'm just confused about our brother Yara. Yara, I know you're listening. How are you going to say that the church fathers wrote the entire New Testament? Are you serious? You know what that means? That means that pretty much it was just thrown together with just somebody's ideas and nothing in it. That's why I always go back to the word authentic, that nothing in there is really authentic. It's just like a fairy tale, like everyone's always said. Are there parts of the Bible from the Old Testament to the New Testament that would be it's like mythology, because the stories are so-called borrowed from other stories and mixed in? Of course, we talked about that. Remember, Yara, we had that conversation about the brothers, the older and the younger, that repeating story. When we look at even in different cultures, different stories like Enki, Enlil, Remus, Romulus. What else did we say? Who else is different, even yin yang, but I know those weren't brothers, but those concepts. And then in the Bible, Yara, we talked about Jacob, Esau, Isaac and Ishmael, Cain and Abel. We talked about that. Yeah, so I get that part. But when you come in and say, oh, church fathers wrote that in 2nd century, there was nothing. We don't have anything that shows that there was any, 1st century writing. We don't have a lot, but let me just make this clear. This is something that is something that scholars often say. So this isn't something that's not, it's not this is so deep, Nepal. They didn't write, most of those people, during that period. They were not writing things down for the most part, not the general population. Of course, there were Pharisees and scribes, but then I can get into all of that of, what happened. I'm talking about immediately following the crucifixion. And so we don't have anything that is written down immediately after. When I say immediately, like you know, what would it be? It would be right after Jesus's crucifixion, right? I'm getting sleepy. When I read the information, it said from months to 5 years after. There were creeds and hymns. Okay. Anyway, let's see here. He just jumps out the window. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. He is you ever see that movie Hancock, Ebony? That's Yara. He jumps out, and a lot of times he gets pushed out, shoved out, and he just hits that pavement and gets up, and walks away. That's what Yara is. He's like Hancock. Remember that movie with Will Smith? Takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Oh, you do? Okay. All right, that's it. I just wanted to show that. I just want to let you guys know what you heard over there in the HOK from Tadariak was correct if he did mention first century writing, which is for the most part Paul. And there, the issue of Mark, that's a different topic, but what is ironclad, and even critical scholars agree that there is first century. No, and God Energy is sharp, because I heard him. I know he knows, so I heard him come in and try to say somebody else wrote Paul. So that was interesting. And again, there is all of Paul. All of the epistles are from what I've studied. All of the epistles are not so-called Paul, but many of them are. And I just quoted some of it to Silent K. He said, where's it written? Where's the first century? Timothy, Philippians, Corinthians, Romans. Okay. All right. That's all. I am finished. Humble, get in touch with me, and I will contact you, and we'll get your show. I'll schedule it. If you get in touch with me early, I'll check my email after this. And it's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am so tired. Excuse me. Calgon is calling my name. Calgon, take me away. I don't really use Calgon, but I do love bath salts. Pause. I mean, for actual bathing. All right. All right, peace. Let me play a song. Y'all like the songs, right? Did you? Oh, wait. Let me talk to Ebony Knowledge and anyone else who watches my shows and knows that Senator told me that I hit the effects too much. Oh yeah, and I heard it come through. Thank you very much, Humble. I'm gonna get with you. Your show is tomorrow, so please bring all the smoke. What am I gonna play? I'm gonna play a song. Senator was playing the little things. He kept on playing my favorite one that I play. You know, the one I do, this one right here.
I don't want peace. I want problems always.
Shout out to Fatty. I got that from Fatty, my brother Fatty. And I like this one too.
Okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
Oh, with that said, peace, everybody. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I am tired. Thank you for coming in. Yes, there are first century writings. Don't let them, believers in the truth, those who know and those who love the truth. Don't listen to these people when they come out and try to tell you there's no first. Don't do your own research. And this isn't a diss on them. I have respect for everybody who gets up on these panels. I don't respect when people try to manipulate and deliberately mislead me, but that's not what Yara is doing in this case. That's not what God energy is doing in this case. They do their research. Their take is this, what they say, and then we do our research, and then we see what the reality is, and what is there, what the scholars say, and the scholars do not dispute that there's first century writing. And no, it's authentic Paul. You say, dang, she likes that word authentic. Yes, because it specifies that you're not going to make it like, oh, this is not, this isn't what it is. It is what it is. All right, everybody. But which one? Where's that one song Sonnetter did? It's really good. Oh, I think this is it. Hold on, let me check. No, I hate that. I don't like that one. That's the one that goes, na, na. It reminds me of those old movies that, anyway. I think this is it. Which one do I want to hit? Let's do this one. Peace, everybody.
Sonnetter the OG with the crown on his chest. Debate MCs, put their minds to the test. Apostle preach loud, sun tired, never rest. Songs got the fire, Jabari's finesse. Inky the original, the captain of truth. Hebrews go to war, ancient scrolls is proof. Bible in one hand, walls of timid in the other. Battles that break bread but never smother. You need thick skin. Arguing facts, not emotions, no tears. You need thick skin just to last through the years. It's the jungle, the wild, the hardest to thrive. Only the sharpest stay breathing alive.
Elder Sonnetter ruling the HOK throne. Sister in the past stands tall in the Bible debate zone.
Lines like beggars, words cut to the bone. A battlefield of minds where legends are grown. No room for the weak, no space for retreat. Step up to the heat or fall to defeat.
You need thick skin, boss up, stop crying. Source your facts or your words start dying. Thick skin, boss up, no denying. This the arena where truth keeps flying.
Scripts clash like swords, debates ignite.
Every word a battle, every stance a fight.
Crowns ain't given, they're earning the ring. Iron sharpens iron, only steel can swing.
You can't fold under pressure, no breaking here. Lions roam in the pit, it's a test of fear. Egos get crushed if they built on lies. Only the realest
Can touch these skies. We arguing facts, not emotions, no tears. You need thick skin just to last through the years. It's the jungle, the wild, the hardest to thrive. Only the sharpest stay breathing alive.
Elder Sonnetter ruling the HOK throne. Sister in the past stands tall in the Bible debate zone.
Lines like beggars, words cut to the bone. A battlefield of minds where legends are grown. No room for the weak, no space for retreat. Step up to the heat or fall to defeat.
You need thick skin, boss up, stop crying. Source your facts or your words start dying. Thick skin, boss up, no denying. This the arena where truth keeps flying.
Scripts clash like swords, debates ignite.
Every word a battle, every stance a fight.
Crowns ain't given, they're earning the ring. Iron sharpens iron, only steel can swing.
You can't fold under pressure, no breaking here. Lions roam in the pit, it's a test of fear. Egos get crushed if they built on lies. Only the